All right, we're going to talk about forgiveness, take two, which is actually kind of ironic because sometimes forgiveness takes two, takes more than one. Actually, this is a very serious dis- discussion about forgiveness. Sorry, you guys, my screen's a little bit off. This is a very serious discussion about forgiveness. Here's the deal. I think too many times we take a like a lighthearted approach, not lighthearted, a light approach to what for some people is a really desperate, hard, serious topic. And that is why I named the thumbnail Is Evil Forgivable? Like when it's really bad, is forgiveness even a possibility? Is it even correct? Is it something that we should be doing? And I'm not talking about like the churchy kind of forgiveness. I'm not talking about the, oh, somebody cut me off in traffic and I should just let it go. Somebody, that's the, we, if forgiveness is as powerful as it is, it's got to work for all the levels. And so we are going to talk about forgiveness, not forgiveness as in the context of like, well, you need to forgive them, And so many times that's how it's preached to us, as in you need to forgive because you've been commanded to. But forgiveness isn't what you think. It is actually the truth that sets you free. So, we're not going to talk about the churchy kind that people expect you to feel. We're not going to talk about the kind that makes other people feel more comfortable because, oh, good, we can just forgive and forget and move on and just get along with each other again. We're not talking about kindergarten forgiveness here. I am talking about the kind that actually sets you free. So, if you have been carrying something heavy, and you'll know it by the feelings it's been creating resentment, regret, like deep, deep, long term regret or guilt. This isn't just a teaching, it's an invitation to finally let it go without denying the truth of what actually happened. So let's get into it. So, for a while, I've been talking about mental clutter, which is the stuff that kind of runs in the backgrounds of our minds and slow us down. And sometimes it's our unmade decisions, our unfinished tasks. Sometimes it's guilt over what we should have done. But one of the most toxic forms, one of the most harmful to us, and that's what I mean by toxic, harmful to us, of mental clutter is resentment. And the only long term solution for resentment is forgiveness. See, here's the deal. If we are doomed to carry on resentment until the other person who has done us wrong changes, then we might be doomed to carry on resentment for the rest of our life. They may never change. They may never apologize. They may never see the need to fix things. That is where forgiveness comes in. It is an opportunity to cut yourself off from the negative emotional ties that bind you to that regrettable, maybe even evil event of your past. Whoops, slow down my screens, you guys. I just lost my notes and give me a second to get back there. All right. So I want to be really clear up front. Forgiveness has been wildly misunderstood and mistaught. I remember in my 20s hearing several different topics, and I'm thinking, I'm hearing different messages from different people that are, have been preaching for a really long time. And like, what does the Bible actually have to say about this? So if you've been told you just need to forgive and forget, or move on already, or let it go, because that's what good Christians do, I'm here to say no, that's not how it works. Forgiveness is not pretending something doesn't matter. Forgiveness is also actually not letting somebody off the hook. Forgiveness, and this is, mm, mm. Forgiveness is not forcing yourself to do something while you're still bleeding. Come on, people. Let's stop preaching forgiveness to the person who's still laying in the hospital from the hurt of the trauma. Uh, It's like we it's like we listen to the story of the Good Samaritan and we're like, the priest and the Levite walked by the man that was injured in the ditch and said, "You need to forgive the person that beat you up." No, that's not the time to be preaching to the man lying in the ditch. That is the time to be hurting the person who is hurt in the ditch. So, compassion precedes compassion and healing. Kind of, we need to create space for that, for tender compassion for the victim of the wrong. And sometimes other people could be the ones that give that to us if we're the victim. Sometimes it's something that we might need to give ourselves. Okay. So I am not saying forgiveness and we're just going to skip over compassion for the victim or all of that. Forgiveness is definitely not a gift you give to the other person, but it is a gift that you allow your own self to receive. So, why is it so hard to forgive? Well, because sometimes remembering and hanging on to the pain can feel like protection. Pain is very useful because pain teaches us the lessons that we might not learn or teaches it faster. Pain teaches the lessons that absence of pain can't teach. Hot stove, don't touch. You know, oh, I broke my leg like this. Don't do that again. There are some things, pain is not good just for pain's sake. Pain is actually a teaching mechanism. Well, sometimes the pain, we hang on to the pain, we take the wrong lesson from it. We think, oh, I need to hang on to the pain. So I'll remind myself to never let myself get hurt again by this person. Okay, that is just an error. We can become mature and protective and wise without needing the pain to be the remembering of that. Okay. So, that grudge, that mental replay, sometimes it feels like it's a way to make sure that we don't get hurt again. Here's the second reason why forgiveness feels hard. So, first is because pain feels like protection. But secondly, also, sometimes it feels like justice. And our hearts and our souls long for justice because justice is actually a beautiful, important, godly trait that we should be striving for. But sometimes we are not the person to be able, capable, or responsible for eking it out completely and wholly. That is why God says, vengeance is mine, I will repay. Sometimes some wrongs are too great or they're working out in God's timing. And for us to hang on to it and feel like it is our responsibility to make it right, and we can't be whole ourselves, we can't let go of the hurt ourselves until the wrong is righted. That's going to get us stuck in the past, stuck in the pain, and keep us from moving in the future. So, over time, it doesn't protect you and it doesn't punish them, but it does weigh you down. On top of you being the person who's hurt, you're the person who's being continually hurt by not accessing forgiveness, by not offering forgiveness, by not creating forgiveness for the situation, by not gifting it. Okay, so forgiveness is literally not about saying it's fine, but it's more about saying this happened, but it doesn't get to define me anymore. So, how do you forgive something that feels unforgivable? Number one, don't do it. Like, don't start by forcing a feeling. Don't pretend it's fine. We're going to start by telling the truth of where you are in the moment. What are you believing in this moment about the thing that you're struggling to forgive? A lot of times it's a really terrible, self limiting story. Like they got away with it, or it ruined everything, or I'll never be the same. So that is, we need to recognize where we're at. Now, listen, you're not going to get to the truth of where you're at by prejudging yourself and saying, well, I shouldn't be there. I should be over this already. No, just honestly let it be. This is what I'm at. This is what I'm believing about this. Ask yourself, why is it so hard to forgive? Because what am I believing about me? Like they hurt me in a way that I will never recover. Or this means that there's something wrong with me. Find the truth. Like, how is this? What is the story that I'm believing? And then the next thing you're going to do is you dare to ask, what if that's not the full story? Forgiveness begins when you stop being the victim of your own thoughts about what happened and start telling a better story. Look, you're already the victim of somebody's actions. Let's not continue being the victim of your own thoughts, of a story that is limiting you and your future. This is straight from the Bible. This is when I realized this. In fact, I'm just going to be super honest with you. Before I tell you the story, I want to give you a little bit of context how I learned this. I had a client that came to me, and it was the very last session. We're closing down the time that we're working together. And she said, I have something that I haven't shared with you, and the Holy Spirit's telling me that I need to share it with you, and that so you can help me. I'm like, okay. And then she proceeded to tell me of a terrible event that happened to her as a child. And let me say, it this is where I get a little bit frustrated with the church. We sometimes don't we're too naive to recognize that evil is possible and capable of slipping into our ranks. Christian, Christian home, supposed Christian person, a Christian adult hurt a Christian child in the most awful way possible. Okay. And then everybody treated it like, let's just move on and pretend it never happened because they thought that'd be best for the child. They thought that it'd be forgettable. Some things are not forgettable. And they thought that that's what forgiveness looked like. That is not forgiveness. Okay. But the reason why I'm getting so wound up and on a little soapbox right now is because as a coach, as more and more of my clients have actually told me stories like this, I'm literally shocked. Like, and what you would think is a small problem is way more broad than I ever imagined. And so, anyway, so in the moment, I felt completely unprepared to deal with that. I had never signed up for that. I'm a coach, not a therapist. But this is where the Holy Spirit works, fills the gaps, gives us words that we don't have. And so I listened to her and I prayed very sincerely, God, I need you. I need your wisdom. I need to know what to say. I need to know questions to ask, how to help. And walked her through a process that I'd never done before. And afterwards, and by the way, complete transformation, day, night to day. She came in one way and came out with totally being free of the burden, free of it because of forgiveness. And then afterwards, I was smart enough to at least write down what had happened. So, and I'm glad I did because I've used it over and over again and I want to share it with you. Okay. So we start by telling the truth. This is what happened and this is evil. But dare to ask the question, what if that's not the full story? Now, let me tell you where I got this from. Joseph in the Bible. If you'll remember the story of Joseph, he was number 11 out of 12 sons, and he was not liked by his brothers, and so much so that they sold him into slavery. and he got stolen away to a foreign country, and they told his father that he got killed by a wild animal. So, as a teenager, probably, he is hauled off to a foreign country, beloved son of his father, now living in a foreign country as a slave. He makes the best of the situation and he works hard, gets promoted, gets honored, and then a horrible thing happens again. He gets lied about and thrown into prison. While he's in prison, he again does the right thing, gets recognized for that. When other people are thrown into prison, he uses his God given gifts to translate their dreams and says, the only thing, remember me when, you're in front of Pharaoh again. Guess what? The guy doesn't remember until Pharaoh has a dream that needs translate. So this guy has been wronged all of his life, starting with his brothers. His brother started this sequence that was horrible, ruined his life, kept on ruining his life, but he kept on moving forward. Now, he helps Pharaoh out. This is such an amazing story and so long, and I'm not doing it justice at all. But he helps Pharaoh out, and he goes from being in the prison one day to being like second or third in command of the whole country of Egypt. Literally, like trusted advisor to Pharaoh. And he starts again applying his gifts of administration to prepare the country for a coming famine. The famine comes. The famine also hits his family, and one day his brothers show up again. And there's a little bit more shenanigans. He's testing them to see if they've changed or what's happened, and all this. Anyway, it all ends up that he reveals himself, says, "Hey, it's me, Joseph." And, they're like, "Oh my gosh." And he's like, "No, no, no." And he, says, "Hey, listen, we're in a famine, bring dad," all these things. And takes care of the family. Then dad dies. And the brothers now panic. Dad's gone. And Joseph is going to have his revenge. And here's the verse. And it's so interesting because I memorized this verse as a teenager and had no idea how it was going to change not only my life, but I was going to be able to share it with others. And they were able to use it even more because they'd gone through more. They needed it more than I did. This is the verse. Genesis 50:20. Might be 50:12. One of those. You meant it for evil against me. He said to his brothers, "Hey, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save many people alive." As in, so Joseph is doing two things here. He's calling out the evil. He is not glossing over it. And that's where we as in churchianity sometimes want to stay naive, play naive, not name evil for what it is. We're afraid it'll be too embarrassing. We're afraid it'll give the church a bad reputation. No, we need to be strong on this point. Call evil evil. You meant it for evil. But that's just half the story. That was the victim side of the story. Joseph overcame it by telling a better story. But God meant it for good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save many people. That is not denial. That is not sugarcoating it. That is the power of telling a better story. It's the ability to look at a real painful moment and see a bigger truth. Jesus did the exact same thing. No man takes my life away from me. I'm laying it down on myself. You guys think you're crucifying me. I came here. This was my plan. At the height of his pain, he's even saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." As in, he's recognizing there are people here who don't know what they're doing. They're just following orders. And I want to forgive them. I'm asking Father to forgive them, because they're crucifying the Son of God. That is the power of telling a better story. That's the kind of story that sets you free. Forgiveness is not a it kind of is a one-time decision, but it's even more so a story that you choose to remember. So, the longer that we've remembered the older story, the more that our brain is going to be tempted to go back to it, even if our heart is desiring to release it. There's thoughts and feelings are connected, but after you've practiced a thought for a long time, sometimes it's a little bit hard to forget that thought permanently. So we just have to practice. So just because you made a decision to forgive doesn't mean that you won't be reminded of the pain, and you'll have to remind yourself, "Hey, I've chosen to forgive that. That was the old story, and now I'm believing this story. God had a purpose in this. God is making all things beautiful in his time. They might have hurt me, but they did not prevent me or my future or my calling. They have no more power over me. That story has no more power over me." So I want to share with you that yes, the old story will pop back up. That's normal. It just means that the new story hasn't taken full root yet. And by the way, sometimes it can in a very powerful moment. For my client, she had such a strong epiphany, such a strong, better story that where she realized, oh my goodness, so many of the good things in my life are a direct correlation to actually what was the bad thing that happened, because I did differently because of that. Like, I broke patterns because of that. I behaved differently. I taught my children differently. I and when she could see that, she was like, "Oh, wow. As horrible as that thing was, I can see the good that has come forth out of it, and I want to be grateful for that more than locked onto the pain." Listen to me, this is really important. This is not something that we can force people into, like, you just need to believe it. You just need to We think that if we see it, we'll believe it. It is not how our brains work. Literally, we see what we believe in. If you don't believe me, look at the algorithms on social media. We are Our eyes are trained to look for evidence of what we already believe. And so that's why belief has to start before even the seeing. We have to be ready to question our beliefs. This is why I think it's so helpful to think of forgiveness as a reframing, as telling a better story. So we're not denying the evidence of our eyes. We're saying, oh, yeah, that was bad, super bad. And it hurt. And I never want it to happen again to me or somebody else. But it's saying, I wonder, is there a better perspective? Is there something else I'm not seeing? Romans 8:28 says, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. I am loved by you, even if I don't feel like it. I am called by you, even if I can't see it right now. Therefore, how is this working for good? And I just haven't been able to see it yet. That is the faith that gives the evidence. That is us walking ahead unseen, and then we will see. We get it backwards sometimes. We're looking for evidence with our eyes when we need to be looking for evidence with our heart. We need to understand that our belief blocks our vision. Okay? So, when the old thoughts do hit, don't panic. Just remind yourself, I've already forgiven. This is just my brain playing the old trick again. Or playing the old track, whichever one helps you. And if you need help locking in that new story, there's one more tool that will actually really help more than anything, any other, and that is gratitude. Gratitude is an amazing, amazing, powerful tool that we can intentionally use. See, what I'm trying to share with you is this: we don't have to wait until we feel capable of forgiving, we can actually intentionally walk ourselves closer to forgiveness. Okay, that's what we were talking about. That's what we're doing. Now, that's something that we need to be willing to do ourselves. We do not need to be like getting behind somebody else who we have judged. They need to be forgiving already and get on with it and start shoving them in the back towards forgiveness. No, that's not going to work. That's not even helpful. So, when we talk about gratitude, even if all you can say is, I'm so thankful that I'm not the one that's doing the harm, like, oh my gosh, gratitude can rewire the pain. I just always go back to that story. I think it was Jonathan Edwards that he was robbed of his horse while he was riding a horse going around preaching. And somebody kind of, tongue in cheek said, what are you going to be thankful for God for on this? You got beaten up, your horse robbed, all this stuff. And he's like, well, at least I can be thankful that I'm not the one that did that. I'm not that person. I am the person that, and aiming to please God, not the one going around hurting other people. Gratitude can begin the process of rewiring the pain. It does not erase the past, but it does stop it from owning your future. All right, so let me just close with this. Forgiveness is not for the person who hurt you. It is for you. It's actually for the person that you are becoming. It's not about pretending it didn't happen. It's about saying it did happen, yet I am going to choose freedom. And that choice will change everything. Now, if this resonated with you, or if you had an aha moment, I invite you to put it in the chat so that other people can benefit from what you have received from this. If you know somebody else who needs to hear this, feel free to share it with them. And if you need personalized help with this, I put in the description a link to my clarity call. It's free, but I do limit it to 3. I only have space to schedule 3 of those a week. But if you need personalized help walking through this, but remember, it's telling a better story, not a lie. It's kind of like glass half empty, glass half full. It's not a lie, it's a change of perspective. But again, understand that we've got to stop thinking that forgiveness, like people should just move on and forgive. No, forgiveness is hard for a reason, but hopefully this video, this reframing of forgiveness is telling a better story, seeing a better perspective, and then walking in the freedom of that. Hopefully that'll help you see how to start practicing it in your own life in a way that does not open you up to being re-victimized or to making light of what the sin is, but it frees you. Okay. All right. If you have any questions, put those in the chat too. I'll be glad to address them as I get a chance. Okay. All right. I hope this has helped you. And I pray that your week is filled with God's love and abundance, and that you walk confidently in your calling, and that any obstacle you face, you find the promise that you need to overcome it. And if you need help finding it, book a clarity call. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.